Right now, there is a real chance Social Security is paying you less than the law says you are owed, and no one at that agency is required to tell you. Think about your own situation for a second. Are you married, widowed, or divorced after a long marriage? Did you spend years earning less than a spouse, or step out of the workforce to raise kids, or care for a parent? Every one of those situations can change what you are actually entitled to, under a benefit category that has nothing to do with the retirement check you may already be receiving. Here is what almost no retiree understands. Social Security is not one benefit. It is a bundle of separate benefit types, and the agency only pays you for the ones you actually apply for. It doesn't go looking through your file for money you forgot to ask for. It processes exactly what is in front of it. Nothing more. Not automatically, not eventually, not once someone notices. If a form was never filed, that money simply sits behind a door that never opens on its own, month after month, year after year, for as long as you let it. I am walking you through 5 of those doors today, starting with the one most of you have already heard of. My name is Robert Hensley, and every week I go through the actual Social Security regulations, the actual forms, and the actual rules under Title II and Title 16 of the Social Security Act, because nobody at any government office is required to walk you through all of this unless you ask about it by name. This is general education, not personal financial advice, since everyone's earnings record is different. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because these rules shift, and I update this channel the moment something changes. Let me introduce you to a woman I will call Geraldine, because her situation is the clearest way to understand exactly how these doors stay closed without anyone doing anything wrong on purpose. Under Title II of the Social Security Act, benefits are structured as separate categories: your own retirement benefit, a spousal benefit, a survivor benefit, a divorced spouse benefit, and supplemental security income, which is an entirely different program under Title 16. The agency's own rules require a specific application, and in some cases a specific form for each category. And eligibility for a benefit and actually receiving that benefit are 2 different legal events. You can meet every single requirement on paper and still receive nothing until the correct application exists in your file. This is not the agency withholding anything out of malice. It is simply designed to respond to exactly what you formally submit, the way the law requires it to. Which means the responsibility sits with you to ask the right questions at the right time before a window quietly closes behind you. Let me show you what that actually looked like for Geraldine. Geraldine is 69 years old, lives outside Columbus, Ohio, and worked as a school administrator for almost 30 years. Her husband earned considerably more than she did over his career. When Geraldine turned 62, she filed for her own retirement benefit online, the way most people do. Quick, simple, done in about 20 minutes. What she did not realize is that her husband's earnings record could have entitled her to a meaningfully higher monthly payment. Nobody at Social Security called to point that out. The system does not work that way. It waited for her to ask, and she never did, because she did not know there was anything to ask about. This is not a rare story. It is the single most common pattern in Social Security claiming. Smart, careful people who did everything they thought they were supposed to do, and still left money on the table because the rules were never explained to them plainly. Here is exactly what Geraldine could have checked, starting with the one most people have at least heard the name of. If your spouse's Social Security benefit is higher than yours, you may be entitled to receive up to half of their full retirement age benefit amount, even if you never worked a single day. If you were born on or after January 2nd, 1954, current law treats your retirement application as automatically covering the spousal benefit too, called deemed filing, and Social Security is required to check both and pay you the higher of the two. The good news is you do not have to hunt down a separate spousal form just to be considered. The catch is that this comparison only happens once, at the exact moment you file. If your own benefit looked slightly higher on paper the day you applied, but your spouse later got a raise, retired later, or the math simply shifted, that comparison does not automatically redo itself down the road. A meaningful number of retirees find this out years later, often from a friend or family member, long after locking in the smaller number. If you are divorced, the rules shift slightly, and this convenience does not necessarily get explained clearly at the counter. If your marriage lasted 10 years or longer, you are currently unmarried, and you are 62 or older, you may be able to claim a benefit based on your ex-spouse's earnings record. And this has zero effect on what your ex-spouse or their current spouse receives. Social Security does not even tell them you applied. A lot of people in their late 60s and 70s assume that divorce severs that connection entirely for benefit purposes. It does not. As long as that 10-year mark was hit, there is a related piece that surprises a lot of grandparents specifically. If you are caring for your spouse's child who is under 16 or disabled, and that child is entitled to benefits on your spouse's record, you may be able to claim a spousal benefit at any age, not just 62 or later. Something called a child in care spousal benefit that gets missed constantly because most people assume spousal benefits are strictly an age 62 conversation. Most people stop here, thinking spousal is the whole story. It is not. So here is something I want you to actually do right now, not later. Pull up your own situation the same way Geraldine's should have been pulled up. Are you married? Were you married 10 years or longer before a divorce? Are you caring for a grandchild who receives benefits on someone else's record? If the answer to any of those is yes, there is a real chance a comparison never happened for you either. Geraldine's own retirement benefit was based on decades as a school administrator, modest but steady, and it genuinely never occurred to her that her husband's much higher earnings record might change her number, because nobody ever framed it as her decision to make. That is exactly the frame I want you walking away with today. This is not a favor Social Security does for you. It is a comparison you have to specifically request. Now here is the second door. And for some of you, it is the biggest one on this entire list. If your spouse has passed away, you may be entitled to up to 100% of what they were receiving or would have received at their full retirement age. Not a percentage split, the whole amount, if it is higher than your own. This is a genuinely separate application from your retirement benefit, filed using Form SSA-10, the application for widows or widowers insurance benefits. And filing for your own retirement earlier in life does not automatically trigger this. Picture Geraldine again for a moment. If her husband had passed away 3 years ago after she was already collecting her own modest retirement benefit, nobody would have automatically compared that number to what she would receive as his widow. That comparison only happens if she or a representative raises it directly. And if his benefit at the time of his death was substantially higher than hers, switching could mean hundreds of extra dollars every month for the rest of her life. Here is the part almost nobody explains clearly, and I want to be precise about it rather than repeat something I could not fully verify. Social Security's retroactive payments are generally capped at up to 6 months of back pay before your application date. For survivor benefits, the same way as most other benefit types. Every month you wait past the point you first qualified is a month you are very unlikely to ever get back. This is not a scare tactic. It is simply how the retroactivity rule is written, and waiting to figure it out later has a real cost attached to it. So if a spouse has passed away in the last several months, or even the last couple of years, checking this specific comparison this week, rather than someday, is worth the phone call, because the further past that 6-month window you get, the more permanently that gap closes. Here is another wrinkle a lot of widows and widowers do not know about. You are allowed to claim a reduced survivor benefit as early as age 60, even before your own full retirement age. Switch to your own retirement benefit later if that ends up being higher once it has grown with delayed credits. Or you can do it the other way. Take your own reduced retirement benefit first and switch to the full survivor benefit once you reach your full retirement age. Which order actually makes sense depends entirely on which of the two benefits is larger and how old you are right now. And this is exactly the kind of comparison a Social Security representative can run for you on the spot, in writing, if you ask them to directly. Nobody hands this comparison to you automatically, the same way nobody handed Geraldine a side-by-side look at her own number against her husband's. You have to be the one who asks for it. Here is the third door, and this one, Social Security does apply automatically if you simply never file early. If you hold off on claiming past your full retirement age all the way up to 70, your benefit grows by roughly 8% for every year you wait. No separate form needed. Let me put real numbers on that so it actually lands. Say your full retirement age benefit would be $2,000 a month. Claim at 62 instead, and you are locked into something closer to $1,400 a month, permanently reduced for the rest of your life. Wait until 70 instead, and that same record could pay out somewhere around $2,480 a month. That is the difference between $1,400 and $2,480 every single month for as long as you live, based entirely on when you signed the form. Nobody's earnings history changed in that example. Only the filing date did, which is exactly why this is often called one of the most consequential financial decisions most retirees will ever make. Here is where people get stuck. If you already filed early, say at 62, and took a reduced check, and you now realize that was a mistake, there is a form called SSA 521, Request for Withdrawal of Application, and it lets you undo that filing and start the clock over at a higher future rate. The window to use it is 12 months from your original filing date, and you generally have to repay whatever benefits you already received. Miss that 12-month mark, and that particular do-over option is gone for good. Waiting is not automatically the right move for everyone either. If your health is a serious concern, if you need the income now to cover basic costs, or if you have no spouse or dependent relying on your record, claiming earlier can still be the right call for your own situation. The point is never that later is always better. The point is that the decision deserves an actual look at your own numbers, not a default. Now, here is a piece almost nobody mentions. If you were born before January 2nd, 1954, you may still have access to something called a restricted application, filing for just the spousal benefit at full retirement age while letting your own benefit keep growing until 70. This strategy was largely closed off for younger retirees under the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2015, but that specific birth date created a grandfather clause that is still active today. If that is you, and you have not specifically asked Social Security about a restricted application, it is worth a phone call, because this option is not something the standard online application walks you through on its own. It exists, but it stays invisible unless you name it directly. The exact same pattern behind every door we have covered so far. Here is the fourth door: Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, a completely separate federal program from Social Security retirement, run under Title 16 instead of Title II, based on financial need rather than your work history. It is entirely possible to receive a small Social Security retirement check and still qualify for an additional SSI payment on top of it, if your income and resources fall under the program's limits. Intake staff do not automatically screen every retirement applicant for this. It typically requires its own application, Form SSA 8000, usually completed together with a representative rather than filed alone online. Picture a man named Percy, 71, a retired warehouse supervisor with a spotty work history and a modest retirement check of a few $100s a month, who assumed that was simply his number and there was nothing else to check into. With a retirement check that low, combined with limited savings, Percy was very likely in the exact income range where SSI could have added a meaningful supplemental payment. And nobody at the counter, the day he filed for retirement, specifically walked him through it. There is a fifth door tied to this one, and I have already covered it in full detail in an earlier video, so I will keep this part brief rather than repeat myself. Extra help lowers what you pay for Medicare Part D prescription coverage, and separate state-run Medicare savings programs can cover your Part B premium entirely, often worth more than $2,000 a year combined. Social Security handles the extra help application. Your local Medicaid office generally handles the Medicare savings program side, and neither one gets triggered automatically just because you are on a fixed income. You have to apply. If you have not checked whether you qualify, that earlier video walks through the real income limits in detail, and it is worth watching alongside this one because a retirement filing appointment is the natural moment to ask about all 5 of these at once. So here is exactly what to do this week. Call Social Security's national line, or better, request an in-person appointment at your local field office. When you call, use this exact phrasing. Ask them to review your record for all benefit types you may be eligible for, including spousal, survivor, divorced spouse, and SSI, compared against your current benefit. That phrase matters because it pushes the conversation past your existing retirement payment and into the categories that never get raised automatically. Bring your Social Security card, a photo ID, your most recent benefit statement, and if it applies to you, your marriage certificate, your spouse's Social Security number, or a death certificate. Write down who you spoke with and the date of the call, in case you need to reference it later. If you have adult children helping you manage things, loop them in too. A lot of retirees find these gaps not through Social Security itself, but through a son, daughter, or niece who happen to see something online and ask the right question at the right moment. While you are at it, create or log into your personal My Social Security account at ssa.gov. It takes about 10 minutes, and it lets you see your official earnings record and your current estimated benefits at 62 and full retirement age and at 70, side by side. If your spouse is willing, do the same for their account and compare the 2 full retirement age numbers directly. That single comparison is often the fastest way to spot whether a spousal or survivor benefit might actually be larger than what you are receiving right now, before you even pick up the phone. It is the same comparison that would have shown Geraldine exactly where she stood in about 10 minutes, without waiting for a friend or a family member to stumble across it years later. None of this means the system is broken or that anyone did anything wrong on purpose. It is simply designed around the assumption that you know which forms exist and which ones apply to you. Most people do not because they are not capable, but because nobody ever sat them down and walked through it in plain language, which is really the whole point of this channel. If Geraldine had asked one direct question at the counter the day she filed, compare my benefit against my husband's spousal amount, her monthly number today could look very different than it does. She did not know to ask, and that is the only reason it never happened. Not carelessness, not ineligibility, simply an unopened door. You now know exactly which door to knock on, and exactly what to say when you do. So to recap the 5 doors, spousal benefits are largely automatic now through deemed filing if you were born in 1954 or later. But the comparison only happens once, so double-check the numbers before you sign anything. If you are divorced after a marriage of 10 years or longer, you may still be able to claim on your ex-spouse's record with 0 impact on them. Survivor benefits are a completely separate application filed on Form SSA-10 with a 6-month retroactive cap. So this one is worth checking sooner rather than later. If you filed early and regretted it, Form SSA 521 gives you a 12-month window to undo that decision. And SSI is a separate need-based program under Form SSA 8000 that can stack on top of a modest retirement check. This is general education, not personal financial advice. Confirm your own specific numbers directly with the Social Security Administration. If you know a parent, a spouse, or a friend on Social Security, please share this video with them today. And if you have got a question about your own situation, drop it in the comments. Every Friday, I answer real viewer questions over on my Posts tab. If this helped you, hit that subscribe button and the bell so you catch every video the moment it goes live. This channel provides educational information only and is not affiliated with the Social Security Administration, Medicare, CMS, the IRS, or any bank.